So I film a lot of YouTube videos and tutorials. I have over 700 videos on this channel. I'm teaching over 8 different programming languages, hundreds of different frameworks, modules, and technologies. And I often get asked, how do you learn all of this stuff? How do you do this so quickly? And how is it one week you're teaching us this topic and the next week you're teaching us that? Well, in this video, I'm going to outline kind of the structure that I use to very quickly learn programming languages and frameworks and how you can do the same. Now, I want to say here that this does not make you an expert. I do not claim to be an expert in a lot of the stuff that I teach you on this channel, and there is a reason why a lot of my content is kind of introductory, intermediate, and I don't get into the weeds of a bunch of stuff because that is very time consuming and it does take you multiple years or months or just hours in general to really get good at these specific topics. What this video will show you how to do is how to become competent, kind of fluent in a programming language or framework, and a general structure to very quickly learn something and then to continue on and pick up the specifics as you need to. So with that said, let's get into the video after a quick word from our sponsor. Before we get started, I need to thank Crowdin for sponsoring this video. Crowdin lets you automate localization for your company so you can release multilingual software as fast as software in just one language. Crowdin has over 200 integrations that lets you connect with different tools so you can localize all customer-facing content like marketing communications and emails, not just your software. With Crowdin, you can set up and sync text and translations with platforms like GitHub, where your translators can then push their work directly to a GitHub repository. This means that translators don't have access to code, but have access to the latest copy of text without having to bother developers. Now, at the same time, developers can receive these translations as merge/pull requests to the repository directly when translators have completed their work. So start automating your localization and translations today by signing up for Crowdin. You can start with their free plan and utilize a 14-day free trial to try out all of the paid features if you so desire. You can do this by clicking the link in the description. Thanks again to Crowdin for sponsoring this video. So I'm going to start by just outlining the algorithm or the steps that I follow to learn something quickly. Then I'll go through each point individually, give you some more details, and talk about why it's important. So step number 1 is to get a high-level overview or kind of summary of what it is that you're about to learn. Step number 2 is to create a curriculum or a list of topics that you want to learn and put them in an order in which you plan on learning them. Step number 3 is to learn one of these topics at a time by either reading through documentation, watching videos, or using really whatever strategy works for you to learn this. Step number 4 is to stop at every few lessons, apply your knowledge. That could be either with exercises or projects. And then step number 5 is simply to repeat this process until you've learned what you want to learn and you've got to that point. Now, it turns out that these 5 steps here are exactly how I designed my programming course, ProgrammingExpert.io. Now, this course allows you to learn Python and Go, advanced programming, object-oriented programming, software design, software engineering tools, and so much more. And the way we design this is that you have a high-level overview of everything you're going to be taught. Every section has kind of an introduction video that gives you some information about what's coming. Then we have a list of all of the topics you can see, the order in which you're supposed to follow them, and after every single lesson, you have practice questions, practice problems, coding exercises, and then we have large projects as well as coding assessments at the end of each section that you can complete. So keep that in mind. There's a reason I use this for Programming Expert, and I'm pretty well sharing with you here how I design curriculum, how I teach stuff, and well, how I learn that at the same time. So with that said, let's move on here to the different steps. I'm going to go one at a time and explain why each is important. So step number 1 is to get a general overview or summary of what you're about to learn. Now, what I usually do for this is find someone who's kind of an expert in the topic that I want to learn and watch a half-an-hour video from them, or maybe go through kind of like 20 or 30 minutes of some documentation or a book or something along those lines, and just try to get a general sense of what it is that I'm learning, kind of some key information and points about this topic, and then hopefully get a sense of kind of what's possible, what I plan on learning, what I don't want to learn, what's maybe beyond the scope of what I want to be learning, right? What's too advanced, or some stuff that's really important that I know I'm going to have to need to focus on. So that's what I like to do in this section, and I can kind of compare this to like reading the blurb of a book or scanning through all of the different chapters of a book before you read it, or when you go to a website kind of scrolling through, looking at the key headlines, the bolded points, stuff that your English teachers probably told you to do and that you've probably never done when you're reading a book. That's what I like to do. It just gives me a really kind of decent picture of what's about to be happening, what I'm about to be learning, and I find it helps me to retain information, especially as I move on to step number 2. So step number 2 is to create a curriculum or list of the items that you want to be learning or the topics. So to give you a concrete example here, I'm doing a Rust programming series right now on the channel. I apologize, I have some videos in queue right now. It's been taking longer than I expected. But what I do when I want to do a tutorial series like this is I start with that high-level overview, then I go and I list out 20, 25, maybe 30 topics that I want to cover in order. For each of those topics, I'll do a few little key points about some important things that I'd like to cover there, and that gives me a really good kind of checklist and guide on the steps that I need to follow along with, or the topics I need to learn to start really understanding this topic. So with Rust, I would have created, maybe like a 20, 25 point list. So on that list, I probably would have had the first video as like an introduction or a setup. The second video is like cargo and Rust tools. The third video is probably like console output. Then I would have had console input, arithmetic, data types, all of those different core topics. Now, why this is important to do as well is that it makes you have to go and figure out all of the topics that you want to learn. And while you're doing that, of course, you're going to be picking up little bits and pieces of information, and you're giving yourself a structure of what you need to go through. And that alone is already helping you understand the language and all of the topics that are coming up. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but whenever I get like a syllabus or I'm in a course or something, I always like to go and look at all of the key topics or chapters or lessons that I have, just to have a sense of what's coming up in the course, why what I'm learning right now may be important. It just helps, right? It helps you structure everything. And for me, I'm a very organized person, and that's what I like to do. So hopefully you guys see the value in this point. At minimum, it gives you a list of kind of deliverables or tasks that you need to complete, and that should help you stay on task as you're actually going through and learning a programming language, framework, technology, whatever it may be. So now we're on to tip number 3, or step number 3 in this algorithm, which is go and learn the topics that are on your list. Now, this one is the most difficult for me to explain to you because everyone learns differently. You kind of have to figure out what your most efficient learning strategy is. And for me personally, when I want to learn these different topics, usually what I do is I reference documentation. Now, it may be official documentation, it may be like an informal guide on something like Medium, or maybe I'm even reading like Stack Overflow posts or something along those lines, but usually I'm reading the official language or framework documentation and going through and learning each topic that's on my list. Now, for me, when I read the documentation, what I like to do is have like a code editor or an environment set up, have the documentation on kind of my secondary screen and be reading it and then kind of applying it or messing around and testing on my other screen. I like to constantly be kind of interactive with what I'm learning. Again, something we did in programmingexpert.io, which you can check out from the link in the description. But the point is, that's what works for me. So for some of you, it may be watching a video on the topic. Obviously, I hope a lot of you guys enjoy videos considering I post tons of them on this channel. I just know for me that I'm usually more efficient reading documentation, but if something's really complicated and I'm not understanding it, then I'll go and watch a video. I'll usually turn it to 2x speed, and that's kind of the fastest way for me to pick up this information. So now we move on to step number 4. You've learned this different stuff, you've read the documentation, you've gone through a book or a video or whatever it may be, and now of course you have to apply your knowledge and check for understanding. So this is why I usually will film a video immediately after I learn a topic. This does two things, right? It lets me have all of the knowledge be fresh in my brain, but it also allows me to immediately check if I understand something, because now I have to explain it to you. You've all probably heard this saying before, but if you can't explain something, you don't understand it, and that's never been more true from my situation. There's all kinds of times where I go to try to film a video, and very quickly I realize that, hey, I have no idea what I'm talking about. I didn't really learn this topic. Back to the drawing board, let's take an hour break, let's relearn it and cover all of the stuff that I really was struggling with explaining, then come back and film the video. Or alternatively, I think I don't really understand something that well, but then I go to film the video and it seems good. You guys comment and you say it was a good explanation. I go, oh, maybe I did actually understand that. I was overthinking it. So that's what I like to do. I'm not saying you guys have to film a video. That's just my way of actually applying my knowledge and checking for understanding. If you're using something like Programming Expert, you're going to have all kinds of exercises that you can go through, or alternatively, you can find some projects to work on or some exercise online. I'm sure there's all kinds of free stuff that you can go through. Maybe it's just, messing around in a code editor and writing a little script that you came up with on your own. anything works, but you definitely need to apply your knowledge and confirm that you do actually understand what you're learning before you move too far. So my step number 5 here, not really much to say. This is just repeat, right? You're just going to pretty much be repeating steps 3 and 4, where you're learning different topics, applying your knowledge, learning different topics, applying your knowledge, etc., etc. And there you go. That is how I learned something quickly and how I create videos pretty quickly on these different topics. Now, I know this sounds like a lot to do, but the first 2 steps are things that you can realistically accomplish in about an hour, right? Get a general overview, get a summary, create a list of topics or a curriculum, then it's about learning each individual topic. And if you're someone who's learned similar stuff before, you'll probably be surprised at how quickly you can pick stuff up. For example, in Rust, which I'm teaching now, data types. I already know all of the core data types. There's some nuances and difference in Rust, but I know what a data type is. I know what an int is. I know what a bool is. I know some of the problems I'm probably going to have with data types. I know I'm going to have to probably convert them. I know how it's done in other programming languages, and that allows me to look for the key differences in Rust as opposed to having to learn something completely from scratch. So keep that in mind. You want to utilize your past knowledge as much as possible and allow you to kind of set the differences or find the differences between what you know and what you're learning, as opposed to relearning something completely from scratch. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Not sure if that was super clear, but that is what I have for you for this video. So as always, if you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in another one.